Hello.
Hello, everybody. Hello, Stephen.
Hey, how you doing, buddy?
Welcome to Philosophy Hour.
Featuring...
Still us.
Yeah.
The same people.
Same people.
Same old.
Anyway, so I was hoping we could shift up the format a little bit here, because it's always been kind of random.
I wouldn't say that.
Would be one way to put it.
Entirely directed by Yahoo questions. Okay.
Well, I mean,
is that a bad thing?
of the ways, of the websites you could choose to direct your life,
Yeah,
is Yahoo Questions the worst?
exactly. I think it's pretty high up there. It's definitely like top 10. Watch Mojo. Anyway.
Yeah, anyway, so I thought this a cool conversation to have, especially with you, Mr. Page, would be the question of, is cooking a form of art?
And we had like an hour of prep time on this, so we're gonna be like...
Last week when you snubbed us, we just went and spent an hour talking about it anyway. I was like, we should record this, but we didn't.
Yeah, because
I wanted to know your input, and I didn't want to talk about it for 2 episodes in a row.
No, that's a good question.
So, I guess the best way to start, and correct me if I'm wrong, would be to figure out what art is, and then see if cooking meets that criteria.
Mm-hmm.
So define your parameters.
But I already feel like we're running into a lot of problems there.
Yeah.
And trying to define what art is.
Yeah, for a while. So yeah, Mr. Page, what do you think makes art art?
No, that's a good question. I'm trying to think. Again, I'm not in tip-top form. I'm extremely tired, running on fumes. But when you talked, or when you spoke to me yesterday about, I think it was yesterday, about baking as an art form, I was reminded of Socrates when he's trying to articulate a definition for virtue and knowledge. And he pointed out that he was called the wisest man alive, okay? Mm-hmm. And he realized, after investigating all other men who were purported to be wise, that though he knew that he knew nothing, at least he was aware that he knew nothing, and that he didn't have these false pretenses and ideas that in fact were only served to mask the ignorance.
Right.
Now, he did say something that else, though. He pointed out that people who had skills, so artists, sculptors, blacksmiths, okay, they had a kind of knowledge, okay, they had skills that they could cultivate, right? Yeah. Okay, yes. And that they could be better or worse at those skills, okay, but the truly exceptional carpenters and the truly exceptional poets and the truly exceptional artists all thought that they had wisdom that transcended that particular field, and they felt capable of speaking on other matters outside of that, even though they were in no way qualified. I think our contemporary analogy might be to our consulting or asking celebrities what they think about things.
Where's Ja?
Yeah, so this actor is very good at the craft of acting, and so obviously I want to know that actor's opinion about the politics of the Middle East. No, that makes absolutely no sense.
Yeah.
Now, in terms of what makes art, so it's a kind of skill that can be cultivated in order to inspire positive aesthetic experiences in the viewer. Okay? I don't know. I guess that could be like a basic
It's a very broad definition.
I think that I can actually roll with that, because...
So say that again, because that was kind of...
So a skill that can be cultivated.
Okay.
And that can be used to create an aesthetic experience in the user, viewer. I said viewer because I was thinking of like a painting, but any kind of person that's using it. So like, you know, you can see a sculpture, you can see a painting, or you can hear a piece of music, or you can eat a pastry, any kind of awe or wonder or extreme pleasure,
Right.
I would characterize as an aesthetic experience. So,
Huh.
Yeah.
I
My
don't know, does
definition
that work
was-
or
Hodger thinks art has to say something.
Yeah, that was my thing was.
Artsy.
Can you say something with cooking? Like,
Ooh, okay.
can
So
you get a
be,
point across?
be more concrete. What do you mean by saying something?
Like, can you
Send a message.
send a message? Can you like I'm
'Cause, like,
trying to tell you, like, cause you know,
a piece of art can like convey like
Yeah.
someone's emotions or something.
like
yeah.
a painting
Right.
can sit like
I think that's a far more sophisticated definition than the one I gave.
okay.
And I really wish that was how art was used, right?
Yeah.
To communicate something real or true or noble.
Well, you know, I don't think
But I don't know if art does that necessarily.
I don't think being an art that has a message like that makes it good art.
I think
You know,
I think
there
it makes
is-
a good art if
There
it can
is
do that.
very mediocre art out there that I think is still trying to send a message, which is
Mm,
why I still
okay.
And that's kind of hard because that gets kind of subjective. Like what you find mediocre, someone else can find absolutely revolutionary. So
Yeah, I mean, just like the question was like, is it art? And that's the thing. Like, if I
yeah, who define yeah.
what was the example I used? So this is kind of a weird analogy, but like if let's say I grew up on a farm
Oh yeah.
that got like destroyed by a tornado or something, and I had to move to the big city.
Yeah.
So I have this emotional attachment to farms and this feeling of loss next to farms. So every time I see a farm, I feel this deep emotion of like loss and sadness, which a painting can convey.
Mhm.
But just because I see that at a farm, does that make the man who built the farm an artist? Even though he was just building a farm, like he was not trying to convey anything. That's me throwing it onto something else.
It's like super subjective.
Does that become art to me, like, or is it just art now because I find something in it?
No, I like that. That's a very good question. Yeah, I'm like all these things are coming back to me about. I was listening to. I'll send you this lecture later on. By a guy.
Homework.
Oh yay! Homework. Yeah, it's a guy. So he's a British historian. He's a popularizer of history, David Starkey, and he's giving a lecture on the history of art. And his line is, when people mention art, I reach for my gun, because he thinks the word art in the modern world has completely been emptied of meaning.
Okay.
That the word art is being applied to like just a panoply of things that he finds hard to categorize in just one umbrella term.
Like a video game.
And we
Which
do
are totally art.
yeah. Well, actually,
No
that's a
discussion.
good question, right? We come to a lot of problems with. So, for example, like the word sport or what is a sport, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so
James
is badminton a sport in the same way that Thai boxing is a sport?
Oh,
In the same way that football is a sport? In the same way that
Like
fencing
I
and
s-
saber is a sport? Like, yeah. So that makes it.
Yeah.
what is the standard of sportiness that
Yeah,
we're trying to live up
is
to?
it like some kind of you have to like some sort of competitive physical activity
Right.
or
Yeah.
Is chess a sport?
Yeah. So then is chess a
I would say no.
No,
Right, so-
well, no, I'd say it's a sport, not a physical sport.
I
It's a
feel
mental one.
I feel like sport implies like athletic
Yeah,
talent or athletic skill.
I guess you
Whereas
could say it's
chess
like
is
a
more,
brain,
and
brain
like
sport or
sports
something.
can very much need mental skill,
Of course, like strategies and all
but they also need
that. A lot of physical.
like I don't care how great you are at understanding basketball strategy.
If you can't apply.
If you're like unable to
Yeah.
get the ball to the hoop,
You're not a good
it's just
athlete.
not happening.
Right.
Yeah. Whereas chess, it's like just the mental
Right.
side. You
I
need.
got you.
But on back to art, yeah. Actually, wait. What were we talking about?
Food as art.
Oh yeah, food is art.
That's the specific thing, but also
Yeah.
just like what is
Yeah, I know.
art in general.
Yeah.
Food can just be a launching point if it needs
So
to be.
yeah, actually, art. If you go back to ancient times, so for instance, no historian can name any Roman artist or artist from the Roman time period, because art wasn't considered a noble pursuit. Okay, art was decoration. So that's what slaves did.
Right.
And And that's where we get the distinction between liberal arts and the servile arts. So liberal arts were the noble pursuits that the libertas, the freed people, did.
Like poetry?
Poetry, rhetoric, grammar, mathematics, all of that. These were liberal arts.
Okay.
And then the servile arts were the lower pursuits that slaves pursued,
Servants.
like decoration. Okay, so now we do have names of famous Greek artists.
Right.
So the Greeks actually
Acknowledged that.
acknowledge. In fact, I'm trying to think. I think Alexander the Great. Apelles, I think it was an artist.
Apapapapapales?
Sorry, Apelles. I'm the name is escaping me. Anyway, he gave this Greek artist one of his concubines because he, loved the art so much. And so art was very well respected in the Greek world.
Interesting.
So it does, I think it does, depend on the culture too. So whether art is revered and held in esteem, or whether it's something that's useful, but you don't actually respect the artist himself, right?
I think you're getting at something a little different.
I am getting at something
Yeah.
different. Yeah, I apologize. I
It's
don't
also-
mean to derail the conversation.
No, it's.
No, you're
I don't
right.
believe there
Mr.
is such
Page
thing as
derailing it
derailing.
for once.
No,
Gee.
that's
Yeah,
look at me.
Yeah, I
Change.
guess this show is just a joke. No. Um,
But
so like, the Romans, I guess, didn't respect servile art.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Did they still acknowledge it as art?
Yeah, so it's a servile art.
Yeah.
It's a,
So they didn't.
it's a lesser art.
so that just means like
That's what I'm trying to
they're
do.
defining it as art, but they don't have a reverence for it
Yeah,
like people would now. Or
I
not
don't-
even. It's like compared to their Greek counterparts.
I'm gonna be honest.
We
with
don't
you.
have any famous. Well, I mean, no, that's not true. I mean, I'm sure there are famous pastry chefs, right?
Gordon
I just
Ramsay.
don't know their
Yeah, I
names.
don't.
Yeah, so.
See, this is the thing I was getting at earlier, not like on this recording about a week ago. Like the purpose of food is to either taste good or be healthy,
Yeah.
or some sort of combination.
Right. Like fill you, basically.
But no one is trying to like say, oh, we look at how hypocritical the rich are
Yeah.
with food. Like, it's
At the very least, it's not commonly known.
because so like if you make a great pastry, like why is it a great pastry? Because it tastes good, not because it
It's
has,
healthy, yeah.
not because it has like some deeper value than that.
Right.
It just tastes good, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Right.
It's just, is that art?
Mm-hmm.
Was what we weren't sure of.
Yeah.
Well, it's not just the tasting good, right? It's the great pleasure that you derive because it tastes so good, okay?
Okay.
Yeah.
Uh,
The sensation.
So, in the same way that a piece of music, like what makes a great piece of music? Well, it sounds good. Well, it's more than that, right?
Yeah.
It sounds good. And so what are the emotions, what are the experiences that one gets from listening to something that sounds good, right?
Okay,
That's
so
that'll be the art. I think I'm making it way too subjective, though.
So
That's the problem with this whole
yeah,
conversation.
It's really
it's so
hard.
subjective.
Yeah. So that's saying like, it's solely based around its effects on the beholder, or like the user.
I would say no. Like for instance, this piece of music is still a great piece of music, even if, a blind person, a deaf, a blind person is listening to it. No, a deaf person
Listen to it.
listens, or
So you think the
It's still
artistic
beautiful.
Then what
nature
makes-
of it lies within it itself? It's
yeah,
not.
I do believe it. Yeah,
So there's something that's like objectively.
even if nobody could hear Mozart's pieces, they still are great music. I would say.
By, what makes you say that? Like,
Well,
what makes it great?
I think
that
again we're getting.
Yeah, that's kind of.
There's so many rabbit holes.
There are
we
lots
jump
of
into
lots of
with
rabbit
this.
holes.
Yeah,
Rabbit
so-
season.
So, but it is art. Like that's what I want to keep. That's what I want to stay with, even if I feel weird
Yeah.
driving people around like this.
Room,
No.
room.
I like this question.
So
Want to go back to food?
yeah. So one thing I don't remember which one of us came up with this thought was like, what if like someone created a piece of food, which this is probably impossible, but
Yeah.
maybe eventually, where it's like it looks like lettuce, right? It looks like a piece of lettuce.
Right.
But the moment you bite into it, you realize it's actually a burger, right? And with that, they could be making a statement like how quote unquote healthy food in our world is just as bad for you as
Oh yeah, I remember
the
this, yeah.
food that advertises itself as bad for you. But no one does that because that would not sell well, like at the grocery store.
Yeah.
No one would be interested in that.
And this sort of plays like into food's own role in society, like you said earlier. It's like for the
that's
nutritious sake, or to like to taste good, or any of that. So it's not the kind of medium that people would typically use to like convey that sort of message.
Yeah.
But vegan and vegetarian options do sometimes they put on the appearance of meat products, right?
That's sort of
Like a veggie burger would try to look like a regular burger.
Yeah.
True.
But that would
intent
be
is different.
so we can sell it better, right?
Or to just generally be more pleasing.
So commercial.
Yeah, it's commercial.
Is that art? If it's just I want to make more money off this.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's what I'm trying to.
Yeah, that's sort of like in the intent kind of thing.
What did Mr. Powers say about this? I don't remember. We were in the art room upstairs
Fittingly
when we were
enough.
talking about this, and
Oh, he would have been, that would
he stepped in for a second to talk to us
He
about
did.
it.
He talked about like how that canvas, like a blank canvas, if you sell for $50, you sell for $500. The 501 is probably gonna go quicker because like people see value of art sort of by.
Yeah, but he gave his own definition of art.
Oh yeah.
It was like, I think he said his was really broad. It was like anything creative.
I don't think it was like that.
It was something like that.
It might have been similar, but it was more specific.
I can't remember like that.
Yeah.
I can't remember exactly, and I don't want to just assume it is because then I might be putting words into his mouth. But
Yeah, no one wants that.
I think it was something really broad, like.
Well, I want
Did
to
it
go
require-
back to your comment about how art is consumed, okay?
Okay.
Because actually, my father wrote a book on the transition of art from being patronized to being bought at, just because this particular artist is famous and people want to have his work. So
Right.
Originally, so like Middle Ages, right? Art is patronized. There are nobles, there's the church, and they, find an artist and they commission them, okay, I'm going to give you this much money and you're going to paint the Sistine Chapel, okay? So this is patronized.
Mhm.
This is an artist who's being commissioned by a noble or the church, okay?
All right.
But in England, there's this transition that happens from that to, an artist, a creative genius, painting whatever he wants,
Yeah.
okay? And then those he puts on the market in expositions,
Okay.
and then people who like that work will buy that. Notice how that's like almost radically opposite, right?
Right.
Okay, and that's a huge shift in the art market. That's the artist is now a very different kind of beast, right?
Yeah.
So, in the former, right, it's the church and the nobles who are telling the artist what they're going to draw, right?
Exactly.
And in the latter, it's the artist deciding what he wants to communicate, okay? And then it's the consumer, right, who gets to choose which one he wants to purchase, okay?
Yeah.
Now, I mean, I don't want to stress the difference too much because if the artist wants to make money, he will kind of like paint for the consumer in a way, right? If the artist knows that this kind of art is going to sell, then he might paint more like that, right?
Yeah.
But I still think there is an important distinction to be made there. Now, I'd be curious to hear what your opinion is then. Do you think that indicates a shift in a definition of art from the first period to the second period?
That is a good question.
Like, so is commercial art still art? Is that what you're asking?
Well, or even is there a distinction between those two? Like, aren't they both commercial in some way? Or
that is tough. Okay, no, here.
Yeah.
The first one is like basically solely commercial because like the artist basically listens to the whims of their patron, yeah.
Yeah, so like the
Does
patron can say, don't paint that,
And they won't
paint what I want you to paint.
Exactly. So it's not even their own thoughts. It's
Yeah.
like basically someone else's ideas. They're just like conveying it. Meanwhile, with later on, like you said, they're just exposing their own ideas, and people who happen to enjoy or not enjoy, But
Yeah.
people who like to agree, or people who like it, are gonna just buy it.
I think that's almost
That's it's sort of the first one is.
more art than less.
I think so.
Because it's like,
It's their idea.
yeah, now if an artist gets big, or after this shift, let's say, now if an artist gets big, it's like their skill at displaying their ideas.
Right.
So it's like there's almost like a philosophical element injected into the art scene. And that it's like you have to have. This is where I get my definition probably is that like you need to have something to say. Like if I go to a painting, like if I go to a blank canvas and just throw colors on there randomly,
Right.
with no real meaning to it, like no real intention behind it, is that art?
Yeah.
I think no, definitely not.
Okay.
But,
Yeah, I think.
so darn it. Okay, I'm forgetting his name, but it's called The Fountain.
Yeah.
I think it was a piece of art that was given to the Met, or I'm forgetting what it was. And it was supposed to be for some competition. It was rejected.
Yeah.
But it became one of the most famous found object pieces of art in the world.
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, I feel like I've heard about
Do you
this.
remember what the fountain is?
It's a urinal.
It's a urinal, exactly. And so, the person who did this, I'm kicking myself that I forget his name. Anyway,
Probably Google it.
I consider him to be the death of art. Like
That's
that
the start,
painting
yeah.
was the end of art.
Was it a painting or was it an
Oh,
actual?
sorry, yeah,
Was it an actual urinal?
It was an actual urinal.
Okay.
Yeah, that urinal was the end of art. So
It's meta art, right?
it's making a commentary on art.
Definitely.
Yeah, so that's the thing. Like
Yeah.
with if I randomly throw colors up, right?
Yeah.
And it truly is random, just because I feel like it, then it's not art. But what if it's like I'm doing it to
But it's
say,
a commentary on art, exactly.
No,
I think.
But that lies in intent, I think. Because if I do it to say, if I do it as a commentary on art, to say, look how pointless and meaningless art is,
Right.
then that's one thing. But if I actually am just throwing colors on there for the fun of it,
Yeah.
is that art? You know, like that. I think there's a line in the intent.
I think we can
somewhere.
only ask that question now, okay, in the modern art world.
Yeah.
Okay? Nobody before the fountain would have ever even considered that question.
What do you mean?
That just throwing painting on this canvas is art. Like that wouldn't have been a question before the fountain, okay?
Okay.
I think the modern art music movement is heavily indebted to that one
That guy.
catalytic effect piece of work. So
And you think it's the death of art?
I think it was the death of art. Yeah.
I mean, I don't think
Interesting.
art is dead.
Well, so he was influenced by a group of people called the Dadaists.
Uh-huh.
Okay, and this movement grew out of the end of World War II, and they were disenchanted with everything. They were
Right.
reeling at the scale, like just the traumatic scale of violence and mass death. And when they looked at the world, all they saw was absurdity and meaninglessness.
Mhm.
Okay,
Yeah.
and so their movement was trying to highlight the absurdity that they saw in the world. Okay, and everything they did was to do that. One of the things they would do is like they'd cut up a bunch of words, and then they'd throw the words down a flight of stairs, and then each line of the poem would be composed of the words as that you'd go down the stairs. Okay, and again, just a commentary on the meaninglessness of poetry.
Mhm.
They did the same thing with art, sculpture. Okay,
Yeah.
and all of that influenced the modern art movement and so broadened
The definition.
the definition of art that we're now confronted with like a blank canvas being sold for
Right.
hundreds of dollars, or just an entirely black canvas, or just like
Yeah.
so. Anyway, I get upset when
The
I
guy's name
hear
is
things like that.
Marcel
Marcel
Duchamp.
Duchamp. Yeah, I remember.
Duchamp.
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 Yeah,
Okay, so why is it that you think? Okay, so
So that broadness of definition to art upsets me.
So
It
I think
does upset
it's
me.
what that broadness is you're opening it up to a meta
Mhm.
commentary,
Mhm.
and that like I'm making art commenting on art, right? Because
Mhm.
before it'd be I'm making art commenting on religion, or I'm making art commenting on politics, or poverty or something. But now I'm commenting on art with art,
And I'm trying to say it's meaningless.
which
or
is a
pointless.
uniquely which is something I think only art can do. Like I cannot make an economy that comments on an economy. Like
that is a fair point.
Why do you? Is it because of the lack of skill required that like anyone can throw words down a staircase and say it's art, or?
Yeah, I think that's part of it, but I don't want to. What's happening is that so sometimes modern art. So like for instance Picasso, he is an incredibly good artist. Okay?
Right.
Like he can paint very very technically well. Okay, he can also paint things that to my mind seem like just awful, just really really bad. But what happens here is that the kind of modern art that you see that's like so absurd, where you might think it would require little skill in order to do, the commentary that it's making on art is all that skill, all that time, all that work that you've done to own your craft and perfect it and work and try to master it. It's absurd and useless and meaningless. Okay, you have wasted your time. It's an insult to true artists, in my opinion.
Okay, it's an insult to other artists.
Yeah.
I guess you could argue he's still like the guy who's insulting the other artists like that.
Mm-hmm.
I would argue he's an artist. Might not be a very good one.
Yeah.
But I think when you start pointing at things and saying, "No, that's not art,"
It's kind of hypocritical.
You're
It is.
you're doing yourself a disservice.
Yeah.
Because the thing about art is it does not require people to think it's art to be art.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
That's true.
So like an artistic movement will happen whether you think it's an artistic movement or not. Like it's just people who do, don't need your approval.
Whether you like it or not.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So, and I guess that could say. I also want to talk about something. It's a very similar idea. So, just like talking about subsections of art. So this is kind of how our conversation segued. We started talking about literature, and I don't know if you're aware of this. You probably are. There was a bit of an upheaval in the literature community last year.
Oh, I didn't know this. But...
when
Bob Dylan.
Yeah, Bob Dylan, the singer songwriter, won the Nobel Prize in Literature.
Oh, for his
lyrics. His lyrics, and that upset people. And I think at first people were just like, because the Nobel Prize does not award things. They do not award the Nobel Prize to dead people.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of really talented authors and traditional novelists out there who might be dying soon, and it's like, why aren't you giving it to them? And not,
Yeah.
But it raised the question of, is his music, or are musical lyrics in general, are they literature? Do they fall into that category?
I personally don't. I don't know if this is what I said last time, but I don't see any reason for them not to be.
Yeah, I would say that they are, and I kind of followed a thought, like a train of thought to basically like anything with any written word is literature, which feels absurd when I start there. But what I thought about was like anytime you point at something and say, or let's just say for simplicity's sake, anytime you point at a written word and say, this is not literature, what you are implying is that there is a line somewhere where you go from literature to not literature. But the thing is, it's really hard to find that line because there's stuff that seems to fit on both sides.
It's like an asymptote.
Yeah, so it's like where is the line between literature and not literature? And no one's going to be able to convince anyone about that.
Because defining that would be it's practically impossible.
To the point where it's so meaningless that you just say everything is literature.
Yeah, you might as well, exactly.
Okay, well I'm curious to find out what are the examples you're using that are
what about, okay, so an example I used, so the Treachery of Images, the painting, with the pipe, and then in French underneath it, this is not a pipe, right?
Okay.
are the written, so obviously that's art, it's a painting,
Right.
But are the words, this is not a pipe, is that literature?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I know that man, whoever painted that, wouldn't go around winning the Nobel Prize in Literature for that.
Right.
No, but you're right. That's not the debate. But
is it
anyways,
literature?
So you would argue that it is literature.
I would, and this is
Okay.
just because I feel the broader your definition for art is, the better, while I don't know.
Yeah, it's a double-edged sword with that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I think I said it wasn't, but
Yeah, I tend to disagree. So I'm going to push back a little bit. Let's see. Why don't we go to Bob Dylan first?
Okay, so that's a good place to start, because that's
isn't it?
Yeah.
easier to argue for being literature than this is not a pipe.
Yeah, I think so when you look at his lyrics
Okay.
and you read them,
Mhm.
and you appreciate the message, the beauty of how the words flow, and you're saying, that kind of experience is an experience of literature as you're reading through that, right? Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay.
I would say that, yes.
Yeah, okay.
But I'm a huge fan of his, so I might be biased.
Oh, no. That's valid. Okay. So I'm thinking about this right now, and I'm thinking about why did he write those words, and how did he want those words to be consumed?
Mhm.
Okay, and I don't think that his creative endeavor is completed or experienced unless those words are put to music. Okay. I don't think he wrote them just to be read off of a page, like just any other page, or if you write his words on this table or something like that. I think those words were, he came up with those words in order to be sung, okay? And if you're not hearing them in a song to the music he composed for it, then you're not actually experiencing his creative work, I would say. Now, this actually I want to link to the "Ce n'est pas une pipe," or "This is not a pipe." So this line, this is not a pipe, right?
Yeah.
Okay, that artist didn't write those words to be consumed in isolation, right? Okay.
Yeah.
He wrote those words to be consumed in a medium.
Right.
So if I write "This is not a pipe" on that table, I'm not actually experiencing that artist's creative work, okay? I need to see that written out on the canvas with the pipe that he drew in order for me to say that I'm actually experiencing his creative work, okay?
Okay.
So certainly the word the sentence rather, "This is not a pipe," is a sentence. And obviously sentences are what literature is composed of, right?
Yeah.
But I wouldn't be able to say that that is the same thing as the painting. I can make a strong distinction there, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And so if you want to say his lyrics are a work of literature, fine, but it's not what he that's not why he made or came up with those lyrics, right?
Yeah.
I mean, so he obviously wouldn't intend you
To just
to print it out on a page and read it.
And
Of
really,
course.
But I think you can. There's nothing wrong with that. And I think it is literature. It's just literature that's designed to be experienced in a different way.
Yeah. So what I'm getting from this
Because I'm sorry, I keep talking over you. He didn't win the Nobel for his chord progressions or his instrumentation or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
He won it for the lyrics.
Exactly.
And even though they are made to be heard in the format of a song, I would agree with you on that. I think they are still very much literature, even by themselves. While they may not be as powerful by themselves, they are still literature by themselves. So, yeah, what were you going to say?
Yeah, I was gonna say from what I'm getting from this that Mr. Page thinks it's in order for it to be fully realized or properly assessed, it has to be done alongside music.
Well, that was his creative intent.
Yeah,
when he wrote those words, he didn't write them to be read. He wrote them to be heard and sung.
So do you think just reading the words without the music, is that
I think that's a literary experience.
Literary experience? Okay.
Yeah, no.
Is it a literary experience to listen to the song?
That's,
right? No,
that's
I
like
don't
no.
think so.
Yeah, that's
Why not?
a
So,
that's a
it's
musical
experience.
yeah.
I mean, yeah, I would say the musical experience is listening to the song, but it could also be a literary experience, couldn't it? You're still absorbing the words. Like
I
the
think
words
that-
are not.
I think there's an intersection there.
Like I wouldn't say an instrumental song is a literary experience,
Right,
Because there
yeah.
is no.
Words, of course.
You know,
But
I
this
guess
one
I'm
has
more
words
com-
and music. So.
Yeah, I don't. There could be a problem, maybe, or philosophically, I might be inconsistent here. But I'm very comfortable making very sharp distinctions between like an experience of poetry, or an experience of music, or an experience of literature. I think I can make very sharp distinctions without being too inconsistent. I would definitely say no. That's a musical experience, not a literary experience.
Even with
do you
lyrics.
think?
Yeah,
do you
even
think they're
with the-
mutually exclusive?
Yeah.
That you can't have a musical and a literary experience at the same time?
So, I'm trying to think of an artist that composes or writes a book that has to also be read while listening to a specific song,
Okay, I see.
and then
That's like
while also eating a specific kind of pastry. Okay, I suppose you could come up with something that had to have all of those
No.
experiences mixed
I don't
together.
think that's what I mean.
Oh, okay, yeah. Then,
I think what Padre's trying to get is just like it's just sort of like an overlap.
Okay, so here's the thing. If I write out, or if I print out his lyrics, and I just read them, that's literature, you would say.
sure, yeah.
And if I listen to them, if I listen to the song, music and all, it's not. It's a musical experience. So when did it stop being a literary experience? Like, what if I printed it out and just read it to you without any music?
No, that's a good question. Okay, I think the difference can be illustrated if we think of, for instance, a play of Shakespeare. Okay,
Okay.
so if I read a Shakespearean play, that's certainly a literary experience.
Okay.
But I really don't get it until I see it performed. Okay, that play is supposed to be experienced theatrically. Okay.
Alright.
I need the theatrical experience in order to fully understand the creative genius of William Shakespeare.
Okay.
And I would make a distinction then between the theatrical experience that I get from watching the words put to life in human beings, blah blah blah, and my literary experience of it by reading it alone by myself, and then I'm trying to imagine it.
I see what you're getting at.
So
I see people out.
are they?
No, I think
Oh,
we're
they were
fine.
just walking back.
Yeah.
Okay. So
I'm trying to see. I mean,
Actually,
maybe I'm
I level-
making
I
a
can level
huge
with
mistake. I don't know.
I
could
can-
be wrong.
so it's not literature when you see it performed.
I can actually level with that.
That's a very good question. I like that.
Because I feel like it's a similar argument.
No, that's very good. That's very good. I like that. That's a smart question.
It doesn't stop it from being literature. But
Yeah,
it's
that's
just,
what I'm saying. Like,
But the experience is different.
it's different,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
sort of like the change of medium.
and you could argue it's different for the better,
Yeah.
but it's still literature.
It's
Again,
more
what
like
is
based
the
up-
it
it's
you're talking
Based
about?
upon
The
literature.
okay, so the words
Because
are still
the
literature.
words are certainly still literature, but so the words are no longer just the words. It's
It's a theater.
it's a human being, and it's being spoken and not read. Right? I argue that it's entirely different at that point.
Entirely.
I
Okay.
can't say it's entirely.
I would actually, maybe I might go so far as to say entirely. I don't, but it's extremely different. Okay, yeah,
There's definitely transformation there.
I will.
huge transformation.
I will concede there is something new being brought to the table
Yeah.
that maybe even Shakespeare himself didn't necessarily intend. We
No.
were just talking about this in English because we're reading Othello right now. So, like, there's a scene where in the movie we're watching of it being performed, there's a scene where one character laughs, and like I don't think he does that in the book.
Yeah.
And so we were like, Miss Carroll was talking about like what could that mean that he chose that
Right.
the actor chose to laugh because obviously
It's like an artistic.
the actor
liberty.
did not get told by William Shakespeare that you gotta laugh.
Yeah.
You know.
It's more of a.
But
I like that. That's great.
are the words already printed out for him? Even though he's bringing something new, the actor, the words are still literature to me. Like, they're still, you know, the idea, especially for a story, which is not something we'd have to worry about with, like, Bob Dylan. For a story like that, like, a lot of the artistic literature value comes not from the details of the written words, from the details of the plot, or, like, the themes of the story, which I think is still very, obviously very much present in the play.
No, I like
and
this.
Performed.
Now we're getting into questions of philosophy of language.
Boom.
Like, we're talking about words now, right?
Poetry's words.
Now this is,
Words.
I mean, that opens a whole other box
another
of
rabbit hole.
stuff. No, I like what you're saying. Yeah, I like what you're saying. And I have to think about it some more. Yeah, maybe it's Deleuze or, anyway, a French philosopher. So, words as like hinges, okay? So, the word itself obviously is just like scribbles on a page, and then certain sounds, okay? So it's nothing other than that in and of itself, right? But the word has a hinge that's supposed to reference something, right?
Right.
So, I'm sorry. No, actually, let's not go into that. I can't do that right now.
That's alright.
I don't have the energy.
That sounds like a whole new
Yeah.
thing.
A
I'm
whole
sorry.
new
I
world.
want to stay on this, so I want to
No,
say,
good, yeah.
We'll save it for next time.
if we're going to find, so, if we believe there's a, because I don't believe that there is a,
Line.
if we jump back to Bob Dylan, I don't believe there's a literary difference between the written word and the sung word.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like, well, okay, there is a difference, but I don't believe that it stops being literature. It's just, like, expanded and
Yeah. It's like overlaps. with something
complemented
else.
with something else.
Yeah.
But it's still literature. Like, he's still saying the same thing, right? And the words are still the same.
Yeah, I don't know if he's saying the same thing, but
What do you think?
certainly the words are the same. Like it just, I think it impacts you differently, right? Just
No,
reading
yeah,
it.
But I think
But
the
the
intention
words-
is more or less the same.
Like, maybe this will be easier if I use a specific example. Okay,
All along the Watchtower.
that's a little too. That's after he got all surreal, and it'd be too complicated for me to try.
Okay.
It would take me 20 minutes. So I'll do one of his early works, Ballad of Hollis Brown. It's actually framed as a story, all right? And I'm gonna nerd out for a little bit if you don't mind.
Awesome.
And it really hits you. It's a story about a poor farmer in, I think, North Dakota, but don't hold me to that. Anyway, he's so poor that he cannot feed his children. He has 5 kids and a wife, and he cannot feed them. He cannot
Provide for them.
yeah, so rather than let them starve to death or let them suffer, he shoots them. He kills them with a shotgun, kills his wife, and then kills himself. And then the last line in the song is, some ways out in the distance there's 7 new people born. So just with that, he's saying, this is not an isolated thing. This is something that happens all over the place. That this level of poverty is hurting people, right? So obviously, I can get all that from just reading it. Okay, but I will say it does hit me a different way when I'm listening to it, and it's got like the guitar behind it and his inflections behind it.
Right.
But I still think it's the same literature-wise. Like it's the same, like it's still literature. It is
Same
not
narrative, same
transformed
story.
into an entirely new art form. It's just being complemented and enhanced by music.
I can level with that too.
I'm suspicious of that, but okay.
Yeah, it's like same narrative, same intention, everything. So basically, all that you've done, is what I'm understanding. What you're saying, all that you've done is add like, just like a musical side to it, which is sort of it just amplifies the effect maybe.
It can kind of give you a cue as to like maybe
Right. Gives you
in a
gives you
broader
extra
sense.
feelings.
Yeah,
Right.
like
Gives
what
you, like
he's trying to.
exactly. So
the feeling. Yeah.
more than anything, it just amplifies what he's trying to convey.
Yeah. But
So,
that
doesn't like deter it from being literature.
yeah, but like all the specific meaning is focused entirely in the words, right? Because if you listen to an
Of course,
instrumental
yeah.
of that song,
It won't give you the same intent.
it's just like
same,
a kind of sad sounding acoustic song.
right.
And you know, you get the feeling of like it's obviously not a happy song. No
Yeah.
one would mistake it for that. But that's kind of where it ends without the words, which is I think why it's literature, because that's where like a lot of the meaning is put. Does that make sense? Yeah.
No, yeah, I'm trying to think. Yeah, there's these overlapping realms, right? There's the music, there's the literature, and then you're saying that in the Venn diagram of those, that fits as both music and literature. Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd have to think about it some more, but I like the way you put it, definitely. Yeah.
Okay.
No, yeah.
So, we seem to have hit a bit of a natural stop. Is there anything else we can talk about art-wise? Like, I was thinking earlier if we went back to this is not a pipe.
Yeah.
And is that written word literature?
Oh, yeah, it's a literature.
Like, what about something like? Because even then, the words are saying something. Like, they provide something, right? And
It's
he's trying to say something with the words.
It's trying to like accompany the
And,
art
I mean,
piece itself.
Even the whole painting is about words.
Yeah.
But like, what about some written word that has absolutely no artistic intent? Like, what about the way?
Like a signature.
Like, okay, so it says the pulse is like spray painted on the wall here, right? I would be willing to bet that no one had any artistic intent with that. They just wanted to say the pulse. Is that literature?
Can a word be literature?
I want to say yes,
Yeah, I would say no.
because like just one word.
Yeah, no.
Okay.
Okay.
So
Can 2 words be literature?
it can be.
He
It doesn't
eats,
automatically make sense.
something like that. That's a very short story.
It's like, okay, the shortest. I don't know if it's a poem. You just reminded me of something.
Oh, sorry. Actually, I completely take back everything I just said. Okay, so in English it doesn't work so well, but like in Spanish,
Oh yeah.
you could use the word. Actually, what languages do you take?
I take Latin.
You
I
take
used to take Spanish. I dropped it. I'm gonna take Greek next time.
Okay.
So
So
This
Like me.
guy.
oh, cool. Very good.
anyway,
So,
but
like,
yeah, I know Spanish.
Como, right?
Right.
That is one word that means I eat, right?
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
So
Oh yeah.
I guess that one word could be a sentence and could
Yeah.
be a
That's a fair
short
point.
story.
So is our requirement that
Yeah. Yeah. That's like in Latin. If you like have like just amat, that'd be like he loves. So right.
He, she, or it loves.
He, she, or it loves.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
okay? So
Yeah.
I'm gonna mention something. So in middle school, it was an interesting activity in my 8th grade English class. One day we were asked to write a 6-word poem, which is very tough when you actually try to do it.
Yeah.
The example my English teacher gave us was for sale, baby shoes, never worn, which is really depressing when you think about it.
Yeah, I like that.
Oh
So-
yeah.
So obviously I'd say that is literature.
Right.
There is something there. So, like, is there...
That was something in your elementary school? Is that what it was?
It was 8th grade.
Oh, okay.
Eighth grade is when it gets
Sheesh.
real.
Yeah, no.
Okay, kindergartners, we're gonna talk about. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah.
keep going.
Yeah.
So, like, 6 words is literature, 1 word is not? Is that what...
Well, no, I mean, one word can encompass
Yeah.
a subject and then
In
action.
English,
yeah,
say in English.
If we're
Let's
limiting
stick
this
to
to
English
English,
here.
because yeah.
So, okay, we could have an imperative, right? Eat,
Right.
and then boom. So
Yeah.
that's
Consume, that might be more...
Yeah.
Ingest.
Yeah, like,
Yeah, there you
The
go.
command.
if you're
Yeah.
making a commentary on American life. Just
Uh,
consume.
I guess that
Okay.
implies. I mean, that one word implies somebody giving a command. It implies somebody's receiving the command, and
Right.
it's something that's, that they have to do as a result, and that means there's a whole back. So I don't know. Maybe, maybe.
So
I would say it is, yeah.
So you're saying it's literature.
I would accept that someone could publish like a poem
Yeah.
where it's just the word consume with an exclamation point, right?
I'll say it can be literature. I don't think it automatically is literature.
You don't think it just is by the nature of being a word.
No.
Okay. So
Well,
if you want to go back to where it says pulse up there.
Yeah, that sort of goes back to like the whole intent thing. Like the intention. I guess are you saying? I guess
Yeah.
but then I'm saying that literature has to have some sort of like ulterior meaning, versus do you think literature just has to be words in general?
Yeah, this is where
It's just like the art
feel,
thing.
This is where I would feel like a hypocrite if I
Yeah.
said it can just be words in general, because I said cooking has to have a meaning behind it to be art,
Yeah.
right? So I weirdly transitioned from.
Yeah.
Maybe
Boom, banger.
it's just because I respect literature more than cooking, so I hold it to a lower standard. I don't know,
Come on now.
which is not fair if I do.
Jeff would be very ashamed.
Jeff would be very upset with me.
Well, obviously, if you eat something, you shouldn't have like an experience of some sort of narrative, right?
Well, I don't
Like,
think
that's
you need
not
a
what you're
narrative
saying,
for it.
right?
But
Yeah.
can any written word? Well, okay. Not can any written word. Is any written word literature? Just literally anything.
That's where I draw my line.
So an indefinite article, like an.
Is that literature?
No, so definitely not.
Yeah, I cannot say that as.
Okay. Why?
There's no story, there's no plot, there's no character
I don't
development.
think we need a story.
There's no
Are we framing?
catharsis, there's no conclusion,
That's-
there's
yeah.
no moral.
Are we framing
there's
literature and poetry as separate things?
No.
Poetry's a
kind of
subset.
literature,
Yeah.
And then there's prose, and then there's
Yeah.
short
Yeah.
stories. And
So let's just assume that no one's writing one-word stories.
Darn.
Can we write one-word poems? Can Anne have
That sounds like really artsy
Literary
and really pretentious, but I feel like.
value
No.
as a poem?
See, I think this is the whole modern art thing
Oh, yeah.
all over again. No.
Yeah.
We're broadening the word literature to incorporate something like an indefinite article.
Yes. Okay. So
no.
yeah,
Okay.
that's sort of like
Okay.
makes everything else lose its value if you're letting
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
itself.
No, I'm sorry.
Unless like
Is
what?
the color yellow a piece of literature? No, shut up. Okay. No. Okay, there are standards.
I'm gonna make a book called Yellow. Every page is just gonna be yellow.
Like the word yellow?
No,
Or-
just
no,
the
it's gonna
color
be just
yellow.
Every page is gonna be the color yellow.
Well, it's not the written word anymore.
So
It's
the
the yellow
written word,
pages.
yellow references the color yellow, right?
Yeah.
So aren't we just cutting to the chase and just giving you the direct experience without?
So basically, you're saying like
So-
objects are now words.
No.
A microphone
No.
is.
Okay. If we want to go that way, if we want to go that
Slippery
route,
slope.
okay. So you're gonna say, look at how meaningless the word yellow is.
I'm
Right?
not saying it's meaningless. I'm saying it has one meaning, which is to refer to that color. Okay. So therefore, just boom. There you go. We have the color.
The color yellow
And
equates to
that's-
the word yellow.
So we don't need the word.
You don't need the word is the color. They're one and the same basically.
Man, whoever I can't remember his name. Whoever painted the treachery of images would very much disagree with you on that.
There's a line from the Chuang Tzu. I really like it. So he says, when you catch the rabbit. Okay, the snare is for catching the rabbit.
Okay.
Once you have the rabbit, you have no need of the snare. The rod is for catching the fish. Once you have the fish, you have no need of the rod. Words are for conveying meaning. Once you have the meaning, you have no need of words. Where are those who have forgotten words, so I can speak with meaning? That was the...
That sounds like a Facebook post.
Sounds like a Facebook post.
Yeah.
Complete with minions.
Which is still literature.
Oh my goodness. Okay, fine.
Yeah, I don't know.
Sure.
Um,
That's an interesting point though. How do you feel about that?
that
like
what?
if
That
once someone understands once you understand the meaning of something, you don't need the. Okay, if everyone understood the meaning of everything, we wouldn't need words.
So if we could communicate telepathically?
That's
So
one way to go
the
about
words are being used in order to communicate ideas. If I can just trade ideas with you...
it. Yes, exactly.
Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying.
How?
So then we wouldn't need language at all.
I think if we could all...
Words are like a medium to transfer.
I think if we could be that close with one another, then we wouldn't need art.
That is, you're totally right.
So
Actually,
that would start a whole other conversation.
I agree with that. Art is for conveying ideas.
That's what I think it is. It's about communication.
Right. That's the number one.
So if you don't need to communicate,
then you don't need the medium.
then
do
you
so.
don't need the means of communication. Which you could argue is worse for us, that we
You
don't
think
get
so?
to experience art that way, but I think the
Oh, yeah.
but you're also like so incredibly well connected that let me just say, this would be a horrible world to live in if we could all, like, if all our minds were just, like, open to one another in that way.
Okay. What is...
Because privacy would be gone, and I like privacy.
Oh,
you know?
yeah, okay. But, I mean, okay, yeah, sure. I think everyone would be used to it, though. It wouldn't be such a big deal. I mean,
We'd be
if
a lot
you
more
don't...
forgiving, I think.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, that's for one thing. But, I mean, if
Yeah.
you never... You would never have the experience of privacy, so you wouldn't miss it. I'm not saying that necessarily makes it better. I'm just saying that's how you would feel. And
Yeah, I still think it's much worse.
okay, Potter.
I like my thoughts that I
No,
keep
no,
to
that's
myself.
fine. That's fine.
Anyway.
Yeah, that's cool.
Back to, God, what were we talking about? Okay, so, the Book of Yellow.
The Book of Yellow. Oh, yeah, the Yellow Pages, as they call it.
So,
I'm sorry, I saw that yellow highlighter
Yeah.
and then that started everything.
if you
It
just
started off.
release a book that's just a bunch of yellow pages,
Yes.
because like yellow, you know, like for no reason,
For no reason.
then congratulations, you have released a book that's full of yellow pages. This would be a stretch, but if someone's like, oh, I'm commenting on the meaninglessness of the word yellow, because look, here's yellow. I don't need to type out
Okay,
with
yeah,
letters
yeah,
the
yeah.
word yellow, right? I would not say that book is literature. It's like some other form of art,
Are you saying it's not
but it's
liter-
attacking literature. It's
Right.
just not using literature
Okay,
to
yeah,
attack
it's
literature.
not like a meta attack on it. So are you saying it's not literature because it doesn't use words?
Yes,
Yeah, okay. Yeah, duh. Okay. So
that's where I draw the line.
that's where you draw the line when you
That
stop using
yellow
words.
book.
Yeah.
I know that's not literature.
We figured
Away.
it out. Okay, so what I'm understanding for you is that so long as it uses words, it's literature.
To convey
Let-
an
let-
idea.
I'm not entirely
Can-
sure about
Does
that.
Is that what you're saying?
I'm not entirely sure about the so long as it's word it's literature, but let's just
Yeah.
for the point of the argument, let's just say it is.
Okay.
That's what I believe. That
Right.
and I'll argue for it just for fun.
Okay.
That any written word is literature. Okay.
Boom.
Any written word at all.
Any written
At all.
word. Just even some graffiti on the
No
side.
criteria. Yes.
Okay, anything literature. Alright, anything goes.
Okay, does it have to be a word that's like in common use? Like
No.
if I wrote grubblum,
Then you have to
is
define
that literature?
what makes a what makes a word a word.
So that's not even in a language, that's just noises. So
Okay.
a word that's just noise is literature to you.
Let's say yes.
Okay, so just a letter.
Clearly-
That's
clearly-
the end of literature.
Clearly, you are commenting on the meaninglessness of. This all comes back to commenting on the meaninglessness of something, which I guess is where you get annoyed.
Well, certainly. Like if you're saying things are meaningless, like actually you're not even just saying things are meaningless. If you're saying everything is meaningless, then you're also saying that what you're saying is meaningless.
It's sort of like
And so I'm okay taking them on face value. Yes, you are meaningless. So I'm going to ignore everything you say. Okay,
Alright.
that's my take on that strategy. Okay.
Yeah.
If you're going to use art to say that art is meaningless, I agree. Fine, you're meaningless. Okay.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean I actually take anything away from that because you've just admitted that you're meaningless. So.
In other words, they just get wrecked. Boom.
Well, they're
So
self-defeating.
it's a self.
Yeah.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
self-defeating.
Yeah, it's kind of like basically shooting yourself in the leg.
So it's like the radical skeptics in the ancient world who said, there is no true statement.
That's freaking.
Wait, is that also not a true statement?
Yeah.
Well then, shut up.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that is true.
No, it's not.
Contrarians, yeah.
Okay.
So.
So you think it's a self? Okay. What if I think it's literature for a different reason? I'm really trying to play devil's advocate.
No, that's fine.
What other kind of parameters would you have?
Okay, so like, let's make this as shallow as possible.
Right.
I post a picture on Instagram of.
Okay,
I actually
hold on, I have to time out for a second. Is Instagram, so you share images?
It's like Facebook.
It's the one with all the pictures. I don't know much about it.
Okay,
either.
okay.
And I have done this actually. Let's say I post a picture of a chimpanzee in an astronaut suit, and you comment, right? So we're not finding any works of literature in the Instagram comment section, so we think.
I see. Oh.
So you comment, grubbleblah, which I imagine is a bunch of is GRBUBOLA, right?
Okay.
Sure.
Oh dear.
Now my first thought might be that, oh no, someone like
Had a
had a
seizure,
seizure
on
on
the keyboard.
Instagram.
Yeah.
Is there literary value
Oh my
behind it?
god, fuck.
Is there literary
Okay.
value?
Okay.
What?
No, I love that. That's a very I love that example. Okay, so is there literary merit to group blah 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 when it's posted as a comment to a picture that you
Of
put on?
chimpanzee and
Of an
astronaut
equally
chimpanzee.
meaningless picture.
Right.
Seemingly meaningless.
Okay, so wait. Okay, so at face value, these things are both meaningless.
Yes.
But you're implying
But
that
together,
like together they have some sort of meaning?
They
No, not
form-
necessarily together.
Not
I'm
necessarily.
just trying to.
No, this is a context, right? The blah 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 is happening in
Okay.
a context.
Well,
Alright.
So in that context,
Is there
does
any way to
blah 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 have meaning?
is there any way for dear blah 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 to escape context? To have no context
Okay.
outside of
Well,
itself?
if you want to complete, so blah blah blah, in and of itself. Okay. I'm
Yes.
sorry, I'm getting a little.
Just like
woozy.
floating around in the void,
Exactly.
the whispers of like, is there literary value to that?
I would say decontextualized. No, it has no
I would say
literary context.
in any form, any context, it's absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
That's what I would say.
Yeah.
I'm
know.
sorry.
Does
I
it
think
even have
Patrick,
does
I
it even
know
have
you-
a definition?
I think this conversation got too weird for me to
It did
continue
get
arguing
weird, yeah,
for
it
or
did.
against things.
Yeah.
This might be a good.
Yes. Here, actually, we do have to wrap it up.
It's
I'm
been
sorry.
about an hour.
I have to.
Yeah.
Have to go.
That should be time.
So,
Well,
any listeners, Stephen, I want you to think about blah blah blah.
Yes.
What literary value it might hold, if
Absolutely none, but you know.
any. And I guess you did say something earlier that I would think I might want to talk about next week. I didn't bring
Oh
it
yeah.
up.
Oh,
I didn't bring it up
words.
because it was totally
Carry on the
separated.
conversation.
Yeah, yeah.
But you said Socrates says he is smart because he knows that he knows nothing, and that got me thinking. How
At
does-
least he knows that he doesn't know it.
He's self-aware. In this
That got me
essentially.
thinking. If he knows nothing, how does he know that?
Mhm.
Okay, so I don't want you to answer that.
No, good. Okay.
Save it for next time.
We'll
good.
try to dive into that
Little cliffhanger.
next week on blah 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 on philosophy. Okay.
Please no.
Okay, so we'll see you next week, and
Don't forget to check your pulse.
bye.